Okay, the beginning of book 2, chapters 1 and 2. And we return to Moscow in the house of the Rostovs, and it's has a real lovely, warm vibe to it. For any criticisms or shortcomings we might have of some of the people, it's successful as just a very, as a whole, warm, loving family. Not that they don't all get along equally, maybe, or necessarily, but it's quite a warm situation. And we see Nikolai. He comes home from the war, and he seems to just fit right back in, especially with Natasha, who's younger than him. And we get a couple of these scenes of him and Natasha talking, and so we see this man-child kind of thing in Nikolai. It's kind of nice, actually, to see this. And everyone's caught up in the joyous mood of Nikolai being home, all the members of the family. And so that was mostly all of chapter 1, and there's a little bit about Natasha, Sonya, and Nikolai sort of coming to agreement. Sonya doesn't want to have Nikolai feel obligated based on his previous promise to her to marry her, and so they're very much still in love, but kind of outwardly they kind of refrain from displaying too much of a devotion to each other. And we get this interesting insight. Of all these family members, we don't actually see the mother too much in this chapter 1, but it seems like she's got the most self-awareness a little bit, it seems. And we can see, so there's this practical side to her, and it's kind of skillful, intelligent side to her. And as it's illustrated in the beginning of chapter 2, it says here, the old count had plenty of money that year, all his estates having been re-mortgaged. So it's not money he has, he's just digging a deeper and deeper financial hole for the family. Eventually it will come due. And from previous chapters, we know that the mother is much more keenly understanding of this dilemma, and it would have been much smarter if she was the one in charge of the family finances. And this sort of skillful intelligence also plays out in her relationship to Nikolai and Sonya. She's seeing this kind of young relationship blossom, and she knows this will be a problem in sort of helping the family sort of survive some financial ruin that eventually will come, in terms of Nikolai marrying kind of someone of their class financially that might sort of bail them out. So you can see how it goes both ways. You have a skill and intelligence and understanding and empathy for one thing, and it could be very helpful, but it can also serve to, you wonder, we don't hear explicitly whether she's talking to Sonya, or maybe kind of there's kind of more subtle hints or pressures for Sonya not to pressure Nikolai. We don't hear too much of that, but it might be there, kind of in between the lines. But anyway, that's a little bit of a storyline. And in chapter 2, it's a little just more about Nikolai being home and the father going to throw this party for the one general, to honor General Bagration. And it's interesting in Moscow how the news of the war and the battle and what's going on, it just very trickles in, and it's, you know, it's kind of like that game of telephone. Information passes from one to the other, and it eventually, what the people hear and believe and say to each other, they authentically believe that that is true, but it's not really in any way representative of what really happened in reality. And so at the moment, there's this very much a patriotic sense of the superiority of the Russian army still, and even though there's this sort of confusion of this last battle that was sort of lost, and they had to retreat. And, you know, you find ways to blame, well, it was really because of this and that and the other thing. And Kutuzov is one of the ones that they blame and come to generally is believed to be incompetent. And yet it was quite the opposite. He was the one who was the most clear-seeing, as it turns out. And so there's that little storyline. And we get this little other storyline hinting that Ellen, who Pierre is now married to, Ellen may have had an affair with Dolokhov. And they say Pierre is absolutely crushed by his misfortune. And so it's Anna Mikhailovna who's relating this story. And so there's these new bits of information. It seems like Pierre's relationship with Ellen maybe isn't working out. And we see there's some complexities within the Rostov household. Not everything is going well, but the family as a whole, you know, it's a loving home, and it's just that, especially parts of that first chapter were really warm. How they all just were so enthusiastic of him coming home. And then right at the end of chapter 2, they're just talking about the news in Moscow and what people thought of Bagrash and Kutuzov, and everything that went on and who's to blame, and so on. Of Bolkonsky nothing was said, and only those who had known him intimately regretted that he had died so young, leaving a pregnant wife and his eccentric old father.